Hi everyone, and welcome back to Drawing What You See. This is our last session together, and we've been learning so much over the past 4 weeks, from learning different types of lines to blocking in your drawings with primary shapes and forms, adding value from general to specific, and learning about the 3 different ways that you can create space within a still life. So now's your chance to put it all together. We're going to be doing a long drawing today, using all of the different skills that we've learned so far. Your drawing from today's session might look something like this. For today's lesson, you'll need a pencil, an eraser, a piece of paper, and a pencil sharpener. You'll also need quite a few objects from around the house. Choose 5 to 6 that you can bring back to your workstation and set up in a small still life. If you'd really like to challenge yourself, choose a corner or half of the room that you'd like to try to tackle in this drawing today. Go ahead and collect your materials and your objects, and I'll meet you at your workstation. So as we begin our longer drawing here today, trying to put together all the skills that we've been learning, you might remember that the first step in creating a drawing is to look. So take a good look at your subject. What is it that you're going to draw? What types of lines could be used to describe all the surfaces and outlines you see, thinking back to the very first lesson, right? How do the items you'll be drawing interact? Do they sit in one in front of the other? Are they overlapping? Is one up toward the top of the page and one closer to you? Are they far away? Is it dark or is it bright in the room that you're in? So let's begin by doing our block in. If you're drawing an object or a set of objects on a table, draw the tabletop first to give your object something to sit on. Okay? If you're drawing part of the room, draw the floor first. This will give your drawing a sense of weight. Okay? So you can watch me draw for a minute, both slow and in double time, and then pause the video when you feel confident and complete your block in. So I'm drawing some small objects on a tabletop right in front of me. I'm going to draw the back edge of the tabletop so I know where my objects can sit, right? And some of my objects come way up top into this space up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my tabletop horizon line here right in the middle or close to the middle of my page so I can make sure I have enough room on the top and the bottom for all my objects. And I like to start in the distance here, okay? So I've got a fan brush, I've got a jar of paintbrushes here, my 409 bottle that you'll remember from previous videos, a mug, my bear from previous videos, and a leaf that I used for our block-ins, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the back here, and I'm just going to block in these very most basic shapes. Okay, so I put my fan brush in just to let me know how that curve moves, and then I'm going to come to the brush that kind of sticks out way in front of the fan brush here, okay, and creating my primary shapes and forms. Starting that top edge of the jar. No details yet, okay? And I can't see the jar, but as you might remember from previous lessons, I'm just going to draw that jar as if I can see right through my coffee mug, okay? So right now, everything is see-through. And that's going to allow me to get my objects into my drawing in a way that makes a whole lot of sense. And remember, it's okay to search, right? We've been talking for the last few weeks about the fact that drawing is about learning a different way to see things. So it's okay if your drawing is messy. That's the whole point. Search for those edges. Ask yourself as you go, is that in the right spot? And if it's not, don't worry, just go back in and fix it. All right, so once I have my block in, pretty much prepared for myself, I'm going to go in and start to actually measure now like we did last time, and I'm going to check my proportions. So here, right, I'm not sure exactly if I have everything correct in relation to each other, right? Is the coffee cup the right size compared to my jar? Are the brushes long enough compared to the height of my bear? Is the width of my 409 bottle accurate in relation to its height? Okay, so just like we did last week, what I want you to do is lay out your pencil and start to measure if you've got, and make sure that you've got the proportions correct. Okay, so go ahead and watch me here in double time. I'm going to make some adjustments, then you can pause the video and do the same to your drawing. Okay, now that I've checked some of my proportions and measured and made sure that things are the right size compared to one another, what I can start to do is add some more details in, right? So the areas where I see detail in my 409 bottle that I want to carry through in my drawing, or the little wrinkles on the metal casings on my paintbrushes, or this really sort of wobbly handmade mug that I've got in my still life that looks really sort of blobby, and you can tell that it was handmade. So I'm going to go back in and start blocking in those finer details. And you always want to remember to keep measuring, okay? As you block in those details, remember from our previous lessons that it can be helpful to add some shadows in at this point, right? Because we're getting ready to start to add value to our drawing here. And you'll notice I left a lot of space over here on the left hand side of my drawing to add that big long shadow in from my 409 bottle and then from my paintbrushes all the way across my drawing, right? But these elements here, these shadows, are going to help balance these really tall objects that move away from us in the drawing, right? Because these are one of the farthest things away from us. And so these shadows and shapes created in the foreground or closer to us are going to help balance out those objects in the back. Okay, so watch me draw for a minute, adding some of the details in, taking into account all of the things that we've been talking about, right? Which objects are far away, which objects are close. How do objects overlap? So I might start to come in here and erase the edge of my coffee cup, right? Because I know that my bear overlaps that coffee cup, and that's going to help start to bring the bear forward toward me, okay? As you do this, make sure your objects that are farthest away are highest on the page and the objects that are closest are lowest on the page. Look carefully to see if any objects overlap, like we just talked about, and check each of the sizes again and again and again, okay? So you can go ahead and pause the video at this point if you feel confident. You can also watch me draw for a little bit longer. But you can go ahead and pause the video and keep working on your own drawing, making these relationships and refining, getting more and more detailed as you go. So what you'll notice now is I've skipped ahead to where I've added some value in, right? Focusing on where my lights and darks are, where the very most dark areas of my drawing are, adding in the shadows and creating a little bit of volume for these objects, okay? So that's the next step for you, is to watch me just a little bit longer, take a look at some of the value that I've already added to this drawing, and then go ahead, when you feel comfortable, pause the video and start adding some value onto the forms. And you can keep it nice and sketchy here, okay? You don't need to get too tight with these values. Keep it energetic, keep your pencil moving around the page, and try to work up the entire page at the same time, okay? And by that I mean we don't want to kind of focus in on one object, get super consumed in the details, and then forget about all the other objects, okay? So we're going to bring our drawing up, all of the objects, all the paintbrushes, the bear, the cup, the 409 bottle, and the leaf, as well as the shadows. We want to bring those up pretty much at the same time. And remember, your shadows are going to be darker closest to the object, okay? And so when you're doing this, you want to think about our last lesson where we talked about overlap, okay? And value as it relates to your overlap. So where this 409 bottle overlaps the table here, right? I've got a shift or a change in value. One side of that line is darker, one side of that line is lighter. And that's what allows me to create a whole bunch of space and make this object look really real, as if it's sitting on that table. You can always go back in with your eraser and lighten up the lights. Now, I could keep going pretty much as long as I wanted to, right? I could work on this drawing for days and days and days. But that's not necessarily the point of the class that we've been investigating together. The point here is to practice seeing things a little bit differently, right? So once I have in my values here and I have in some of the details, I might decide I don't want to go in and get any more detail because I really sort of like the looseness of the lines that I've created. And I'm starting to like the searching lines that we've talked about, right? And then sort of this ghosting of the form out here, okay? So you can keep working until you feel like your work is done, and it's going to be different for everybody, okay? The main question is, does it look the way you intended? Do the objects make sense with one another? And if they don't, go ahead and go back into the drawing and adjust some things to make the result closer to what you see and closer to what you want to have in your drawing, okay? So The other thing too is as we work, right, you'll notice I was working back and forth to try and balance my drawing. So it's sort of like a set of scales, right? If we add something to one side, we don't necessarily have to add the same thing to the other side, but we want to have a relationship between all the areas of our drawing so that when someone looks at our drawing, it's interesting all the way around, even if there's some dead space, right? I've added the shadows in here to sort of offset or balance the brushes and the marks in my brushes. Okay, so you can see that some of the marks here are really similar to some of the marks I made over here to add value. Same thing over here, right? And then I kind of got my leaves working in that same way. So I'm allowing myself to bounce back and forth between the objects, adding value to create a sense of wholeness and unity to the work. Okay, so again, continue working on this as long as you need to bring it up to the level that you want it to be at. And then what you can do is you can continue to add objects, continue to get a little bit more complex with your still lives, or go outside even and start observing the world around you. I really hope that this class gave you some tools and some confidence to be able to look out in front of you and to be able to draw what you're seeing in the world. It's been such a pleasure to teach you, and I hope that you keep looking, keep seeing, and keep drawing for a long, long time.